in continuation of the exceptions, we have already discussed about what is checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Okay. So specifically, I'll talk about like what are unchecked exceptions and checked exceptions today also. So let's have like, first we'll go with the unchecked exceptions. What are unchecked exceptions? So exceptions which may encounter during the compile time. Okay. So take a simple example. So if I'm talking about like unchecked exceptions, close everything. Let's take some few examples here. I'm just creating some methods. So numeric, arithmetic exception. Okay. Arithmetic. If I say word arithmetic exceptions, I just write this small quotation. Okay. So what we say when do we get the arithmetic exceptions? When something is divided by 0. For example, 3. If I create an object for this class, so I say that and C exception is equals to C exception dot okay, we we get to say this arithmetic exception because divide by 0. Okay, so this is one sort of exception. The other thing is like we have few exceptions here. So as we discussed, we'll see null pointer exception. So we don't get this null pointer exceptions here outside because it will fail this. Okay, so when I say trying to create another object here, here what we discussed, we have a null here. So what happens in this case, it is trying to encounter some null exceptions. Okay, so now you see here we are trying to get the arithmetic exceptions because if something is divided by 0, then we get the arithmetic exception. Null pointer exception is like when something is not pointing to this, then we are going to get this null pointer exceptions. Okay, let's go and try to execute this. Now what is that? We got only arithmetic exception. So here from here it is getting terminated. Okay, abnormal termination. So to avoid this, what we are trying to do is like just I'll comment this and try to get the null pointer exception. Okay, now you see that null pointer exceptions because this is not pointing to anything, but you are trying to access it. Okay, now these are called checked exceptions. Okay, so compiler doesn't know that this would compiler doesn't know that it would just try to check these things at like no compile time, everything is going good, but runtime you can see that it's kind of like exceptions it is going to throw. Okay, so this should be handled and we'll see that how do we handle this exceptions. Okay, so these are the unchecked exceptions. And let's talk about like checked exceptions. So just I'm going to paste it here. Checked exceptions. So here we'll see what are the checked exceptions now. So unchecked exceptions are like which cannot be checked at the compile time. Okay, so checked exceptions are which can be checked at the compile time. Okay, so one is runtime, another one is like compile time. So let's go and try to rename. Let me add it to everywhere. So here, now it's kind of like, if something we are trying to find out some files or something, okay, SQL, okay. So SQL exceptions, how these SQL exceptions will be identified here. So now what I'm trying to do is like I'm trying to establish the connection here. So I'll just say that I'll use some kind of statements wherein it's going to register some classes and here. So connection con is equals to driver manage dot get connection. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is like I'll try to call this. So we are going to create checked exceptions for this. So what I'm trying to do is like now I'll show you like what are the checked exceptions. How this can be handled using the compiler. Okay, so how compiler will be identified and what it does is like it's going to just ask you to throw this exception, because throws exception is like, for example, if some exception is found here, see now you can have this throws exceptions. Okay, add throws exceptions. What happens in this case is like, now you see if this class, this is not class, this class is not loaded properly. For example, the class is not registered. You cannot go and create the connections for the SQL. Okay, now you see what kind of, now compiler is like identifying this set of exceptions would come. Okay, this set of exceptions would come. Then what the compiler is doing is like it is throwing those exceptions. Okay, so throws keywords will be used to throw the multiple exceptions. And other thing is like throws keywords, what it does is like it will throw the exception, and if any calling method, so this like calling method, like this calling method should be responsible of handling this. Okay, for example, now you see if I'm just putting it as like declarations here, this two exceptions what we are getting as part of this method will be thrown, and this particular method, the main method, should be responsible of handling this. Okay, for example, now you see, go and execute this. What is happening now? The first one, class not found exceptions. Okay, there is no class which is registered. Okay, so SQL, in case of SQL, it's not registering anything. So likewise, we have other things as we discussed. Public void read file. For example, I'm trying to read. Okay, file reader. This is a class fr is equals to new file reader and some location. Okay, so here I'm going to give some location. So what it does, it's like it's going to throw the exception. Why this throw exception is thrown? File not found. Okay, so now if I try to call this C exception dot read file. Okay, it is also going to throw this exception. What is that exception? File not found exception. Okay, now you see if you get the file, if we see that if it returns a file not exception, file not found exception here. See, because this file is not there is no file. Okay, so there is no file, it's called an empty string. So in case of checked exception, now compiler is checking and it is like, getting those exceptions listed here. Okay, throws exceptions, what it does is like it's going to throw the exception so that the calling method can handle that. Okay, so this is the difference between checked and unchecked exceptions. Okay, now we'll introduce a new thing called, how do we handle this exceptions? Okay, new things called try catch. Okay, so first we'll go to the unchecked exceptions and we try to use the try catch. Okay, unchecked exceptions with, just using try catch. So here we discussed about like these are the unchecked exceptions. Okay, for example, now you see to handle these exceptions. So first time what happened? So I got some exception. Okay, so I got some exception. Let's do one thing. Let's go and try to use this try catches. What is the syntax of try catch? Try and the risky statements given here and the catch. Okay, so exception and what is that exception we want to find out. Okay, there are different methods we have here. If you want to print only a simple message, that we can use the system out .e dot get message. Okay, now you see how does it exactly handle this? See, divide by 0. Okay, now the exception is handled. The control from here, it will go to the catch block. Okay, so because this is a risky code and we got some exception, this exception is handled here. Okay, so e dot get message would get you the message, only the message. And if you want to get the localized message, what is that localized message? It's like kind of a method we have, which it will print the details of that particular message. Okay. So here also it's getting the same, and we'll see what are the other things that we can use. Okay. Get message, get fill in stack trace. So it's going to give in detail about it. Okay. From where it is coming up, like, this is the package and we have this exception. Okay. So after this, we have another exceptions, get cast, get stack trace. Okay. So when it says get stack trace, it's going to bring you the details, few more details here. From here it is coming. Okay. So this is the object and is coming from this stack. So otherwise you can use spin track trace. Okay. So its stack trace will be printed. So this should be removed because it's going to use the print class here. Okay. So print statement.
Sir, what is the stack trace?
Stack trace is like kind of, it's going to give the details of it. Okay. Now you see, it's like kind of an object, it is showing up. This is the location actually. Okay. So you need not to worry. So generally we are going to use messages, like whatever the exceptions that we are going to get. Another one is like print stack trace. Okay. So when I execute this, now you see what is the difference here. Now you get this all details, right? From where exactly the exception is happening. See, when you click on this, it will show this is the exception it is throwing. From the exception, it is this is the method that we have called. And from here, the control will come to the catch block. Okay. We are handling that exception. We are not abnormally terminating. Okay. For example, if you want to continue with the execution. For example, if you want to do something here, so you want to print something saying that this is a statement. Okay, this is a simple statement. Okay. Now you see, how do you find out like whether this is executing properly or not? I have written saying a simple statement here. Okay, so this is a line number. Let me write something at in try. In catch. Okay, so now execute this program and see how this execution will be continued here. See, so what it is doing, this is simple statement and catch. So it is here the exception is thrown. This exception is handled by the catch, and after handling the catch, what we are doing is like we are continuing the execution. Okay, so generally this try catch blocks would be used to handle the exception. And if you want to do some continuation with the exception, like for example, if you want to continue with something else, okay. In this case, what we do is like we are going to use the try catches. Okay.
Okay,
so,
sir.
Yeah. So there is another keyword. We'll discuss about that finally. When do we use finally, and what are the different things that we can do as part of like finally. Okay. So now you see we have defined two methods here. Okay, two methods. One is like arithmetic, another one is like non-point exception. For example, here I have taken the exception. Okay. Here I have taken the exception. For example, I know what is that exception that I'm going to get. Okay. So let us take like this is the arithmetic exception I'm going to get. So what I'm going to do is like I'll go and copy it here. Copy and paste it here. Okay. I'll take another try catch here. Here I'm going to put exception. Okay. So exception catch. This is a simple statement in catch with arithmetic exception, and here with parent exception. Okay, so try to focus here. This is like try to understand. I don't know if you have any doubts here. So now what we have is like arithmetic exception. Okay, I'm going to execute this. See, what is that exception we got? Arithmetic exception. It is going to the catch block and it is trying to execute it. For example, if we have this, if we have something else here, null pointer exception. Okay, let's go and execute this. So what is that we are getting now? Parent exception. Okay, so here what happens is like what is the parent that we have? Throwable is like a parent. Under that we have exception. Under that we have compile time exception and runtime exception. Under runtime exceptions we have like different exceptions, arithmetic exceptions, null pointer exceptions, whatever exceptions we have. Okay, so there are different exceptions. Now in this case, what happens is like if you give any matching exceptions in the sense the exceptions is like, this is like a parent and this is like a child. Okay, so when you give any set of matching exceptions, for example, we are talking about like null pointer exception. I'm going to put it null here, and here I'm going to put the arithmetic exception. Okay, so arithmetic exception. Now what happens is like first it will check what kind of exceptions that we are getting. Okay, so it will go and see catch exceptions. Is it a null pointer exceptions? No, it will skip this and it will go and check for this next exception. Arithmetic exception. Yes, it will come here and it will execute this statement. Okay, so let's go and try to see what is the output that we are going to get. Arithmetic exception. Okay, now we handle the arithmetic exceptions. Let's go and try to see what are the other exceptions that we want to handle. Now you see what I'm trying to do is like it will come here and it will check for the null pointer exception. Okay, so run as Java. Now you see that null pointer exceptions. It is matching with the catch block. So what it does is like if you know that the particular exceptions will be thrown at the runtime and you want to catch it, you can specify those exceptions here. So the sequence should be like it should be from child to parent. Okay, so these are like child and this is like parent. If for example, if you are specifying something here like instead of null pointer exceptions, I'm going to put something as like number format exception. Okay, number format exception. Okay, now it will come here. It will check this is null pointer exception. It will go and check number format. No, it's not number format. It's not arithmetic. It's like exception. This exception has like all the kinds of child classes. Child class in the sense child exceptions. So it will in this exceptions, it will go and try to find out what is that exceptions. Okay, and it will catch that null pointer exception and it will print it and it will say that it is coming from the catch block. Now you see, so it is coming from with the this is a simple statement in catch with parent exception. Okay, if we have matching exceptions and you will know what are the matching exceptions that we are going to encounter during the execution, then you can go and give it in this sequence. Okay, and the sequence should be from child to parent, not from parent to child. For example, if you see, if I specify this exception and after that if I'm trying to put this, it will throw the error because parent exceptions will have all kind of child exceptions here. Okay, so now it should say that remove catch class. Okay, unreachable float, because this will not be reached here. It will come and it will terminate the program here itself. Okay, so there is no point of writing these things after the parent exception. Okay, for example, now you can write it as like a throwable exception. Okay, throwable is parent class of this exception. For example, if you are trying to get something here, what I'm trying to do here, like I'm going to get another exceptions, so which are not part of like this exception. Okay, so it can be something else as like if we can take some kind of error. Let me just do one set of I'll write a function here. I'll write a piece of a code. Okay, so public void public int test. Okay, so int I is equals to. So here I'll take some I is equals to some 100. Return I into I. Checked exception dot test. So from which exception it is trying to do is like it's going here and it's trying to execute this. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is like I'll try to call this method. Here in this some method I'm going to create and that method I'm going to call it. So let me go and try to execute. What I'm trying to do is like I'm just creating a recursion, okay? So method recursion. So it's not static. So I'll try to call it in somewhere. So I'll create another method, public int test1. So in that I'm going to call it as like test. So here unchecked exception test1. Okay, here also it is like able to do some actions, then it is returning. Okay, so what I'm going to do is like I'll try to create one thing here. It's like I'll not do the return statement, but here I is equals to I into I. Then after I'm going to return test1. Okay, it's kind of like recursion. Okay, it will go into a multiple loop now. When I call this, it will call this. Again, it will return this. Again, so what it does is like it's kind of like it will go into the multiple. See what is happening now?
Checked exception, right?
Okay, so it is like continuously executing something and it is saying that null pointer exception. So it is coming to some certain point and is getting catch. Okay, so from where this is getting caught now? So here I should have written this one as like throwable. Okay, so it's not null pointer. Okay, so it's a throwable exception. Now you see throwable exception. So what is happening in this case is like it is like recursion. Okay, so if I call this method, it will call this method again. It will return this method again. Like it's like continuously it will be into this loop. Okay, so now these exceptions are not defined as part of like the parent exceptions. Okay, on top of it we have a throwable exception. These throwable exceptions will have all the exceptions which are listed down. Okay, throwable is like grandparent. So what is the topmost class of this Java? So we have an object. Okay, so when I say I'm going to show you like from where it is coming. Okay, I say throwable exception. Okay, so here it's a class. Okay, I'm just clicking on this. Now you see this is the object. Under that object we have throwable. Okay, under that we have error and exception. So if I go to the exception, you'll see all these exceptions are listed down. All these exceptions will have both compile time and runtime. See, here we have runtime exception and SQL exception. Okay, so SQL exception we printed. Now you see runtime exceptions. We have arithmetic exception and we have array index out of mode exceptions or any other exceptions like file format exception. Sorry, number format exception. No such element exceptions. So these are the different set of exceptions that we have, null pointer exceptions. Okay, so under this we have these exceptions. So what is that exception that we are getting as part of like throwable is like just have written the throwable. When stack test, it is throwing that this is exception is passing here. Okay, because it returning and again it's like it will return this. Again, this method would be calling. Again, it's like kind of a recursion. Okay, so which is happening and which is like losing the memory of it. So that is the reason why it is throwing the exception here. Okay, so this exception came here and it caught the print stack trace and it's printing this. Okay, now you see this is a child class, this is a parent class, and this is a grandparent class. Okay, if any of these exceptions which are occurring as part of this try catch blocks, and if you are not sure about the exceptions, like what kind of exceptions, runtime exceptions or checked exceptions that we are going to get, so we are going to put it as like exceptions. So if you are not sure about like whether it is exception or error, then what we do is like we are going to give it as like a throw. Okay, so this is a sequence that we have to follow. This is another interview question, guys. So what is the sequence of putting the exceptions? We have to say that child, parent, and grandparent. Okay, so we can have one try with multiple catch blocks. Okay, so one try with multiple catch blocks. And now we try to see the same thing in checked exceptions. Okay, how do we handle this checked exceptions? Now we'll take this checked exception example with try catch. now I'm going to remove this. So whatever I've defined it as like, I'm going to remove it. Now here also, we have some exceptions which are defined, right? So here also we have to have these exceptions if you don't have a try catch. Okay. Now you see try, I'm putting it as like a try catch. Now it is optional. Okay. So it is optional. It is optional in the sense now try when we are writing the try catch blocks, then it's kind of like it's going to handle it. Okay. So we need not to throw those exceptions. Now you see, it's not asking you to throw the exception. It is like optional now. Okay. You can still go and throw the exceptions here. So it doesn't give any error. Okay. So it's kind of internally what it does is like it will handle these exceptions. Whatever exceptions which are thrown by this method will be handled in try catch. Okay. Now let's go and try to execute this. Now you see file not found exception. Okay. So these exceptions are coming from this particular name. So it will show like from where it is catching. See, here we are getting the exception. Okay. After this, I want to execute some statements. Okay. So execute this line. Let's say execute this line. Now go and try to execute this particular program. You see, it will say that execute this line. So what is happening now? It is catching the exception and it's continuing with the exception. If exceptions are like, if this try catch are not defined, if we are getting some exceptions, in that case, what happens? In that case, it will terminate the program. Okay, let's see that example also. I'm writing this piece of code here. It's going to ask you to throw the exceptions explicitly. Okay, now you see. So this is child class. Okay, so this is parent class. This is grandparent class. This is grandparent class. I mean to say that the sequence is like this is class. Under that it is a subclass. Under that we have another subclass. Under that we have a subclass. Okay, file not found. So it is suggesting you to put this file not found because this particular method will throw the file not found exception if the file is not available in the given location. Okay, it is asking you to give this one. If I uncheck the next one, okay, so this one, SQL exception. Now we see, so it will ask you to throw the two sets of exceptions. See, and I say add throw exception, it will say class not found exception. Another one is like SQL exception. Okay, so class not found exception is child class of reflection. Reflection is exception is the child class of exception. Exception is child class of throwable. Okay, so instead of this, directly you can give one exception. Okay, so there may be multiple exceptions which may occur, but I want to give it as like a one exception. Then directly all up to us, like you can give the multiple exception is like exception or throwable. Okay, because these exceptions are like whatever we are these are the parent classes. So now we'll go and try to execute this program and see what is that exception. Class not found exception, because it is coming here and it's showing this exception and it is handling and it is, see, now this is not printed. Okay, now this is not printed because we did not handle the exception. Okay, I thought we have removed this, right? Now you see, I'll remove this and I'm asking to handle the exception properly. Okay, execute this line. Now this is fine, but I want to put like if we don't have any exceptions here, it should go and execute this. Okay, but I'm thinking that this would be some risky code. Okay, for example, this is fine. I'll put it here. Now you see. What I'm going to do is like I'm going to put some multiple try catch blocks. Okay, now you see. What I'm going to do is like here, I'll say that execute this line. So I'm going to write something as like file not found. Okay, file not found exception and it. Okay, I can put multiple try catch blocks also. Now see, try and the catch. Okay, so for example, now here what I'm going to do is like I want to have the try catch blocks inside this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is like here I'm going to put try. So it is kind of like what it is doing now. It is kind of like it is creating the object. Okay, let me just create the object for this also. I'll go here and create the object. Now we see we have try and catch for the read file. Okay, so here we'll say something as like class not found exception occurred or handled. We can say okay. So found exception handled. Okay, now you see we have try here for this method and we have try here for this method. Okay, so let's go and execute this. What happens in this case, we'll see. First, what happened here? So it has caught this exception, and after that, what it is doing is like it will continue the program with the next step. Like no, what it is doing here after catching this exception, so it is continue to execute the rest of the code. Rest of the code also has the try catch block. Okay, so what it is doing now, it is completing this execution. It is coming out of this loop, coming out of this particular line. It is going here and it is trying to execute this particular line. Okay, so it is finding some exception. It is throwing this exception and is being called here. It is caught here. Okay, so we caught the exception. Okay, so we can write try catch block like this. Otherwise, we have another option. Like for example, see, we can have multiple tries. Okay, we can have multiple tries. I'm going to remove this one. Okay, so now it's kind of like this is. So we need to remove this one. We need to put it here. Let's try, and this is another try. We have to put one other. Okay. Yeah, multiple try catch blocks. Here, what I'm going to do is like I'll close it here. And for this, Control C. Now you see. So earlier we have put one try catch and one, I mean, separately we have put it, right? So now what we are trying to do is like we are putting is like nested tries. Okay, nested try. Okay, multiple tries in the sense try inside the try, you see. So if this is passing and if you don't have any exceptions here, it will go and execute this one. If you have any exceptions, it will stop the execution here itself. Okay, first is like we got file not found exception, right? So we are going to put it as like file not found exception here, and we are going to, this is like, if the class not found exception, like for example, SQL exception, it is, kind of like triggering the SQL exceptions. It's just like if you don't have any exceptions, it will come here and it will take this try class. If you have any exceptions, then what it does is like it's going to get the exception and it will be caught here. Okay, this is like it will not enter into this until unless we don't have any exceptions in the first risky code. Okay, so risky code we are putting, and if it is like if it is executed properly, then it will go and try to execute the next line of try. Okay, otherwise what it does is like it will catch the exception and it will terminate the program. Okay, let's go and execute this and see what is the output here. So we are getting like file not found exceptions because this file is not found in that location. For example, I am going to give something location wherein we have the file here. So simply create some file. For example, we'll take this property of this file. Okay. So here I'm going to specify this file location. Now go and try to execute this. Class not found exception because this file is found at this location. Now what it does is like this is like kind of it's working fine. Now it is going, the control is going to this into this try, and it is trying to set the class driver for this, but we don't have any class driver, so it is throwing the class not found exception. Okay, so this is nothing but nested try. So the other one we discussed about like two tries in a same method. Okay, so one try will have a risky code, another catch. Again, likewise, we have a number of things. Okay, if else block, kind of if else block. If this is working fine, then it will get into this. If it is failing, then it will go to the else block. Okay, try catch is like if else blocks. If anything is like failing, okay, any risky code is there, then what it does is like it will go and catch at the exceptions. These exceptions will be caught in the catch block, and after that it will continue to execute. For example, if you want to see something like for a system out, continuation is like you want to multiply some 3 into 8 or something. Okay, now you see what happens is like 24. It will continue the execution. Okay, so this is nothing but nested try catches. Okay, nested try catches. For every try, we should have a catch associated catch to it. Okay, for example, if I don't define catch here, Let us check. I'm not defining catch here. So what it does is like it will throw the exception. It will throw the error. Okay. So insert, it says like insert one. Okay. So now it's kind of like a situation. Now we don't want to have the final, we don't want to have the catch blocks. Okay. We can create a block called finally. Okay. So finally, a block called finally we can create and we can do whatever stuff we want to do. Okay. So here it's kind of like you don't get anything exceptions here. Now you see, file not found exception handle. We are not handling the exception, right? So we want to execute this block. Executed. So exception is not handled. Okay. So what we are trying to do is like now exception, we don't have exception handling mechanism anymore. But finally block, what it does is like, though you have exception or if you don't have exception, what it does is like, it's going to execute this particular line. Okay. See, what is happening here? We don't have any exception here. We did not get any exception, but we are getting exception here. It is being caught here, but finally gets executed. Okay. Though executed, though exception is and is not handled or handled. Okay. In both cases, what it does is like this particular piece of code will be executed. Okay. Finally means if you have exception or if you don't have exception, it will be executed. And other thing is like it is not necessary to have the catch block if final is defined. Okay. For example, now you see in this case also, I'm just going to comment this line. Okay. So now what happens? So we have try here. So for this, we have to add the final. Okay. Now you see, catch is not required. We can have the finally block. So how many finals it will be executed? It will be executed. See, what is happening? First it is coming here and we don't have any exception. It has executed this one. It came here. We have exception, but finally will be executed. After that, finally will be executed. And finally, it's kind of like it's not handled, right? So that's the reason why it is terminating the program. It is finally executed and it's terminating the program. For example, if you have this clash blocks defined. Okay, now you see the different output here. See, first it came here and it caught the exception. Okay, so first it executed this one and it has executed the finally block. Okay, what is the associated finally block to this? This one is the finally block. Okay, so it executed this one, again came back to this. Now it is like it caught the exception. And after that, catching the exception, it is like printing this, whatever like file not defined exception handled. And after that, it's going to execute the finally. Okay, so I'll say that finally execution handled in try one. I'll say, okay, this is try two and this is try one. Now we'll see what happens in this, how this control will be flowed. You can see. First, what is that we have to get? We have to get the try two, because first it is coming here and it is trying to execute this first. Okay, as you say, it's coming here. We don't have any exceptions. It is we have exception here. Exception is handled here, and it is like coming to the try catch or try block. So we have to write it in the sequence. Okay, so that we can easily understand. Now we have to write it here. This way. Okay, so try catch. Two tries here. Okay. Try closed, catch, and after this, after closing. Okay, so this is nothing but completely a try block here. Okay, so after that we have another try. See, this should come under this, right? So this is altogether a first try. Okay, first try, and this is like we have a second try block. Okay, so now you see, I mean the second try block here. I'm sorry for that. So first try is like we have this one and second try is here. So if this try catch whatever, if you don't have any exceptions, it will come here and it will try to execute this one. If you have any exceptions, what happens now? For example, if you are giving something here, instead of zip, I'm just changing the name of it. Now you see what is the output. In this case, we did not handle the exception. So what it is doing, execution, executed though execution is not handled or handled in try. Okay. So this is executed first. After that, exception is like it is thrown. Now it is like it's not moving away from the, like it's not getting into this try because we have an exception here. If this exception is caught somewhere, then what it does is like it will go and execute the second. Okay, let's go and try to execute this one. It's like I'm commenting this. So in this case, we are defining somewhere which we have to do it here. This class not found exception. This is fine. We have a try and we have a catch for this. Okay. So where do we need to define this finally? We have to define this finally here. Okay. So here, what we have to do is like we have to close this. We have closed this. Now we have try. So try which try it is glowing. It is trying to close this like this try. Okay. So, but what we have to do is like we have to remove this one. Now you see, okay. So for every associated try, we have a catch. See, in this first we'll go from internal. Try, catch, finally. Try, catch, and finally. Okay. So now if I go and execute this program, you see a different output here. Okay. So first is like this is catching the file not found exception. Okay. So file not found exception. Where is the file not found exception? This is a file not found exception. It is catching this, and after that it is executing this particular finally. If file is found, for example, if I'm going to put .zip, .zip, okay. Now I go and execute this. Now you see you get a different set of exception. File not here. What is happening? Class not found exception. File not found exception is like it's not throwing because the file, whatever location we have specified, it is available there. Now we have like exception 2 first will be printed because it's going to catch the exception. It is like printing this. Where is that? Yeah, printing this exception. Exception here. It's handling the exception and it is printing the details of the exception. After that, it is coming to the finally block and it is printing this. Okay. After that, it is going to the next thing. That's nothing but the final try. Okay. Next thing is the final try. So it's going to print this. Okay. What is the use of finally block is like, though we have exception or we don't have exception. In that case, it will go and execute that particular piece of code which is written inside the finally. Okay. Another thing is like, do you need to have a catch for every associated try? No, that's not required. Okay. If you specify something inside the finally block, or if you specify the finally block along with the try catch, along with the try or along with the try catch. Okay. So we need not to have this. It's not mandatory to have the catch for every try block if you are specifying finally. Okay. If you are not specifying finally, and if you don't have catch also, then it is no meaning. It's no meaning. Okay. I mean, how do you handle this? Why this has been introduced is like, see, for example, if you are establishing some connections, okay, to the SQL or any other network. So in that case, what happens is like this, we have a risky code. Okay. Try will be like, it will have a risky code. If you have some exceptions that should be handled. If it is not handled properly, abnormal termination, there can be damage to the program or sequence of execution. If you want to do something that will not be properly executed. So that is the reason why try catch has been introduced to handle the exceptions. In that we can have like, multiple tries and multiple catch blocks, and we can have a nested try and catch blocks also. Okay. So finally he is used to execute the piece of code, though the exception is handled or not handled, but it will go and definitely execute that piece of code. Okay. So that is the difference between like, to have the try catch and to have the try finally blocks. Okay. Are you clear with this, guys? So this is very important, but in terms of like, when you just look into this, you'll easily understand it. But the thing is like, when you try to have this set of situations, okay, situations in the sense, now you see, I want to have this multiple, like there can be a risky code. Okay. Whenever we are writing some database connections, we have try catch blocks for each and every piece of code. Okay. I'll show you that. How do we exactly have this try catch blocks? Okay. So there, but the thing is like, to handle the situations like if you have any risky code, for example, if file, like if you don't find the file, or else the proper driver connection is not done, or else if you have some errors in the executing the statements, or no queries that we are posting it to the SQL. So all these things should be handled properly. Okay, so that is the reason why we are going to use the try catch blocks as part of like exception handling. Okay, so we have another thing that is important in case of interviews is like what is the difference between throw and throws. Okay, throw and throws. Throw is like it will throw one exception at a time, and custom exceptions will be generated. Okay, so custom exceptions. If you have any custom exceptions, then we are going to use the throw keyword to throw the exception. Throws is like it will throw the multiple exceptions. Okay, multiple exceptions. So we'll see the difference between throw and throws. I'll just try to create a simple program here. Versus. So here what I'm going to do is like I'll try to create public void test. In this test, I'm going to take this one. Okay, let me take this file reader. File reader. Main method. Main. This we are going to create method called process throw. Okay, so now I'm going to call this read file method. Okay, dvt dot read. So here it will give the suggestion. This is nothing but this is compile time exception. Okay, so this is like checked exception. It is saying that unhandled exceptions type file not found. Okay, file not found. You can use the throws declaration, or you can surround with the try catch. Okay, surround with try catch. Now you see what happens when I say try catch surrounded. So it's going to take this particular piece of code as like risky code, and it will be associating. It will add the catch block which is associated to that. Okay, so now if I go and execute this, see what is happening now. In this case, it is handling the exception. Okay, in this case, it is handling the exception. To check that one, we are saying that end of, I'll say end of catch block. I'll go and execute this. Now you see what is happening, end of catch block. It's showing that end of catch block. So here, those keyword, what it does is like, if you are not specifying any kind of like try catch blocks associated to that particular method, whenever we are calling inside other method, so we have to use throws keyword. Throws keyword is like throws keyword, it will throws the exceptions, number of exceptions that we are going to get as part of this particular risky code. Okay, for example, we have some method we have written some piece of code or something we have written in that piece of code or a method, it's going to return the exception. So who is responsible for handling these exceptions? So the calling method. Okay, the main method is calling this method, right? So this method should take the responsibility of throwing the exceptions. Okay, throwing the exceptions to the user, or else you can use the try catch blocks to handle the exception. If you don't want to handle the exception, you can use the throws keyword. Okay, so for example, if I write this one try catch here, see, so try and associated catch here. Now you see what is happening now. So here itself, this particular exceptions will be caught. Okay, it is like particular exceptions will be caught, but still you see what it is doing is like it is asking you to throw these declarations. Okay, so if this exception, now you see what happens. Now I'm calling it This is like kind of a risky code. Okay. So risky code, though we are not throwing the exception. Let me just remove this exception and let's see that what happens when I remove this exception. Okay. Now you see it's not asking you to throw this. Okay. Because we have this throws keyword here. Whenever we are using throws keyword, this throws keyword throws the exception. If that particular exception is not handled by this method, so the calling method should handle that exception. Okay. So now we go and execute this. What happens is like it will throw the exception, the line number 17 it says. Okay. I see. From where the exception is being, once we are calling it, and this exception is like kind of caught here in this method. Okay, it's all up to like it's all up to us. But what is the difference between throws and throw? Is like throws is like it's going to throws the number of exceptions. Okay, so here you can see that if you don't want to throw number of exceptions, for example, we are writing another kind of piece of a code that we are writing here, which is kind of like a risky. Okay, now you see throws file not found exception, and here I'm adding one other thing is like throws file not class not found exception. Another we are adding is like SQL exception. Okay, instead of throwing this many exceptions, I can throw one single exception at a time. That is nothing but exception. Okay, so now we don't have try catch here, so we have to handle it here. Okay, so it's kind of like we are throwing the exception directly. Okay, this is the difference of this is what we have in as part of like throws. Now, what is the throw keyword? How do we use the throw keyword? Now you see, I'm going to cut this piece of code. I'm going to write it here. Public void test. I'm checking some condition. Okay. So if block throw exception, this I'm going to write throw new exception. Okay, in this what to say? So this is like custom exceptions. Drivers not set for SQL connection. I'm taking some value like Boolean. Flag is equal to false. Flag. So it's kind of like it is asking me to throw these exceptions. Okay. So let me just put it as like throws this collection here. I'm calling this throw test. Otherwise, we can put it as like tvt.list. Okay. I'll remove the static. So what is happening here? It says like file not found exception. Okay, access denied, modifiers, access is denied. So it is saying something. Let me just put it as like 0. Okay, so to get the next exception. Say driver not set for exception, SQL exception, SQL connection. So what is happening here? So this flag is false. Okay, this flag is false. What it is doing is like it is going to this particular else block and showing the exception. Okay. So now you see what we are trying to do is like we are writing some custom exceptions here. Okay, custom exceptions. What is the difference between throws and throw keyword? Throws is like it will throws multiple exceptions at a time. Okay, multiple exceptions at a time. Otherwise, what you can do is like see if the flag is true. Okay, so what it has to do is like just delete it. We copy it here. So now you see what it is doing is like it will throw this exception, it will terminate from this line. That is the reason why it is saying that unreachable code. Okay. So let me do one thing. Let me give a clear idea about like how do we use this throw keyword. But throws is like I'll give another example for this to understand what is throw actually. But you can see this throws is like it will throws multiple exception at a time. And this particular method should be like, if some method is calling this particular method, it should return these exceptions to that method. Okay. So throw is like you are going to throw one exception at a time. Okay. So now you can remove this. See, flag is equals to false. I'm deleting it, but here I'm putting it as like true. Then I will see what is happening. Drivers not set for SQL connections. Okay, so it is throwing the exception and it is terminating. Now, the thing is like you want to put this one as like try, catch, exception, e dot print stack trace. Okay, now this is not required. It is optional for us. I'm going to execute, it does the same thing. Okay, I say drivers not set for SQL connection. Okay, if I'm setting is like flag, I see the difference here. It is false, it will throw some different set of exception. Now see class not found exception. It's coming to this line, it is throwing some other exceptions. Okay, so this is what the difference between throws and throws, but I'll give a detailed example about like throw. How do we create the custom exception and what scenarios that we can create the custom exceptions. Okay, so I'll write it under custom exception. How do we create custom exceptions and ways also I'll show you. Okay, now you see we have some set of requirements here. Okay, so in main method I'm writing something as like I'm checking for the age here. Int okay, let me take it in a let me take this value from the console. Okay, this is equals to scanner class will be used for reading the data from the console. Okay, so now I have the scanner class here. So system out, please enter your age. Okay, so here I'm going to take int age is equals to say dot next. Okay, so here I'm checking if age is greater than or equal to 18. I'm writing, please cast your vote. Okay, so now we are going to write the else block. In this, we are going to say that through the exception, through the new exception saying that exception. What is that exception? Sorry, you are not eligible for pay. So what it is now, what it is doing is like add throws declaration. Okay, so add throws declaration. So if we don't have any catch, okay, so catch block, try catch blocks, it's going to throw the declaration. Now you see, I'm going to throw it as like throw exception. What type of exceptions that we are trying to throw is like, sorry, you are not able to vote if that particular condition is not met. For example, here I'm going to enter the age as like 23. We don't get exception. Okay, please cast your vote. Now I'm going to give the age as like some 8 years. Now you see what is happening now. Exception in thread main says like, sorry, you are not eligible for voting. Okay, so this is one method of doing it. Okay, I'll try to take everything as part of the different method here. Required test. Okay, so now I have to throw this exception. I'll take the same set of example, vote 1, but here I'm going to change it as like throw the exception, right? I'm putting it as like empty. And here I'm going to create another class. Okay. So class, I'll say that my exception extends exception. Okay. So exception. So here what I'm going to do is like try to public void toString. Should be written in string. Add return statement. Sorry, you are not eligible for casting. Okay, so it says like it's going to something fails. Now what I'm going to do, my exception. See what is happening now. So I'm just throwing the my exception. Okay, so let's go and try to access two methods at a time now. I'll try to access the second method. Quote. Okay, we need to create C exception is equal to new C exception custom exception. So C exception dot quote test one. So test one, this will be called now. I'm going to execute this program and I'm going to enter. First is like I'm going to enter this one. See exception. Sorry, exception. Sorry, you are not eligible for casting mode. So from where it is coming now? See, I've created a class and this class is overriding. Okay, so there is a exception class. In this exception class, we have a toString method. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is like I'm going to override the toString method. Okay, so here the toString method. Yeah, let me just show you. Yeah. So here you can see what it is doing is like it is taking the string and it's trying to return that particular string. Okay, public exception and it's returning the string. Okay? This is nothing but it's a what is this? This is a constructor. Okay, constructor is taking that and it's passing to the super. So now when you see this, we have this set of constructor with the exceptions, exception, and exception. Okay, throwable class. What is that that you want to throw it? Okay, so we can take this methods and we can override this. Okay, so here what I'm doing, I'm just creating a separate class. In that separate class, I'm trying to return my own exception. Okay, so this public toString method is like this is the method of the object. Okay, so when you go to this toString method, otherwise you can check for the object also. So in that object class, we have a toString method which is defined as part of it. Okay, so here you can see that the exception object, right? It is the object. Now you can see these are the methods. You have a toString method. Okay, so I'm taking the object class method and I'm just overriding it. And you can otherwise you can create, for example. So here also I can go and create a method called string message. Yeah, I'm going to call. I'm just creating a constructor. How do we access this? This dot message equals to message. So here it is asking you to throw some message. Now what it does when you execute this program, it's a main exception. So, but we don't have any message here. So if you want to return it, okay. So my exception class we have. This is not required actually. Okay, but what it is doing is like it is printing. So what we have to, we are getting it from that particular my exception and we have to return it. Okay, so like we don't, if we have this one, we can return it. Okay, otherwise what we can do is like we can just try to call my exception, or else if you want to display some method. Okay, void display, otherwise you can say that string return message. This is another way, like directly you can call this toString also. You can use my new my exception. You can make this one as well static. It's only a constructor, guys. Sorry, we can still go ahead and we can try to override this whatever we have methods inside these exceptions and we can use it. Okay. So let me not make it much complex. I'll just do one thing. I'll try to have this whatever we have defined earlier, right? So I'm going to take that one and I'll just try to override this method. Okay. So what is that we are trying to do is like now we have that method, right? Whatever method we have defined here is like public. It will return that public toString. So whichever method is available here in this, I'm going to use it. So return statement is like, sorry, you can't cast it. Okay. So when I go and execute this program, you see, it's going to say that, sorry, you can't cast out, because this particular method which is there as part of EC, it is saying that overrides throwable toString. Okay. Throwable is like part of exception. Okay. So now it is like two method, whatever we have in case of this particular throwable. Here you can see we have all the methods which are set here. So stack trace and everything. So let me just try to check for toString. See, toString, what it does is like it will take the parameters, get the class name and everything, return. It's going to message. It's going to return the message, whatever message that we are doing. Okay. So it's like returning a string represented of it's a representation of this throw. Okay, throwable. So we are going to override that throwable and we are going to put our own method. Okay, so we are going to put our own method. So we are checking this condition. If this checking condition is okay, it will execute this. Otherwise, it's going to throw the exception. This is my exception, custom exception. In other ways, you can see directly you can use like throws new exception and you can pass the exception details here. Okay, if you don't have any exception customized, I mean like directly you can do it. Another one is like we can do it in this way also. Okay, second way is like it is easy for us to write a number of exceptions. Okay, so this is not the only class. You can take another class, you can override it and you can put something else. Okay, for example, if you have another cases, okay, here this is okay. If this guy is eligible for this, another thing is like if, for example, nationality. Okay, nationality. I'm checking nationality. If he's a nationality IND, then only he can vote. Okay, some string here. So string, so nationality is equals to okay. So we'll try to take it as like one other. Please enter your age. Please enter your nationality. So here nationality would be like equal to sc dot next. So we are going to get two values. Now we are comparing this. Okay. So if else, what we do, we throw another exception. Okay, not this exception, but this time we are going to use my own custom exception. Exception. So directly I'm using it. Sorry, you can't vote because you are not an Indian. Okay, Indian citizen. Now go and execute this. I'm giving 23 and I'm giving USA. So this is leave this message like you are eligible for voting, but the next exception is like sorry, you cannot vote because you are not an Indian. Okay, so finally what we can do is like we can remove this one and we can put if both are matching, then what we do here we are going to put okay based on our conditions. Okay, now you see we have two exceptions which are defined here. Okay, one is like you say if your age is 82 and you enter is as like some Indian. Sorry, you can't cast vote. Okay, so which one is executed? So this one is executed. Okay, and next one is like I have a age criteria eligibility and my nationality is like USA. Sorry, you cannot vote because you are not an Indian citizen. Okay, so two exceptions that we are catching. So this is nothing but custom exception. Custom exceptions can be created based on our requirements. Okay. So this is all about the exceptions, right? So the other thing is like we're talking about something called errors, right? How do we have these errors? And these errors are like we cannot handle the errors. Okay, so we cannot handle the errors here. So I'm talking about errors class. So here I'll give the example here. I'm going to use the main method and have a string buffer. Yes, buff is equals to new string buffer and I'm writing some int I is equals to 0, I is less than 100 L I plus plus. Okay, string buff dot append I to I. Okay, I'm thinking this is a risky code. I'm just trying to put it in a try catch block. Okay, so try catch exception E here E dot print stack trace. Okay, so this should be handled right now. We don't have any issues here. Let me try to execute this. Okay. So it is keep on trying to multiply it and get the value here. Okay. So what it is doing is like it will try to multiply these values. Okay, it will take longer time. Let me just put it as like some other value. I'll not print it, but I try to multiply that value. Okay. So let me take this complete value as like some more values. See what is happening here? Out of memory, Java heap space is completed, exception in thread. But did we handle it? Let me execute this again. I'll show that cached exception. So it is out of memory. We cannot multiply this one and this one. 10,000, 10,000. If we like keep on doing this many times, what happens now? Out of space. We don't have memory to perform that action. So what it is doing now? It is not handling this. This is kind of like an error. Okay. So this is an error. So it will say that out of memory error. We don't have memory here. Okay. So this is one example. The other example would be like, I'll just comment this line. So we'll get this. Why? Okay, we have to comment one. So this what I'm going to do is like required right. After this, what I will do is like I'll call the same test method. Okay, so method inside a method that I'm trying to call it here. So here I'll go and try to make it as like static. And execute this. What is happening now? So it says like stack overflow. Okay, so these are the errors, guys. Errors cannot be handled. So errors cannot be handled because these are like, we are making intentionally, we are making the mistake. Okay. So it's kind of like I'm trying to call it's a recursion method. So if I try to keep on, it's kind of like it's going into the continuous loop. Okay. After that, the stack will overflow. Okay. So methods keeping on methods like, putting all the methods in a single stack. In that case, what happens is like stack, there will be some memory for that. In that case, what it does is like it's going to overflow. So that is done by it throws the stack overflow error. So we can't handle this set of exceptions. This set of errors, sorry. Okay, so they're not exceptions, these are errors. So and the other thing we also looked into is out of memory. Okay, so out of memory is like it's not able to multiply this many things and it can't print it. So that is the reason why it's going to throw the out of space and out of memory. Another one is like we see that we have this set of errors which will be reported in case of stack overflow. Like if methods are putting inside this stack and the stack is like it's kind of a basket, it is like it's overflowing. In that case, it will throw the stack overflow error. Okay, so hopefully I think we are done with this, guys. So how do we handle this exceptions? What are the different exceptions? What is checked exceptions? What is unchecked exceptions? What is error? What is runtime exception? What is compile time exception? Okay, so you can able to if somebody asks you what is exception, what is error, you can differentiate this. Please watch this video again, guys. and tomorrow we'll be connecting. Okay, so tomorrow is Sunday, but still I want to take the class. So tomorrow we'll start with the file handling. So we'll complete file handling tomorrow, and how do we read the data from the Excel file with a couple of examples. And, I'll show different ways, and after that we'll try to finish this collections on Monday. Okay, so first also we have the class.
Oh, same time, sir.
Yeah, same.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'll upload these programs, guys. Please try to practice it and see that if you have any doubts, please let me know.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Bye bye.